we're going to President Choi, will you entertain a motion from me to suspend our board policy around it's OGP 3, the section on recording and broadcasting meetings, to temporarily suspend that for this meeting so that we may move forward. I'll formally make that motion if you will entertain that at this point.
Yes, I will entertain a motion.
So I move that the board temporarily suspend board policy, the section of board operational governance policy 3, where the board has said that all meetings shall be broadcast and recorded, just to temporarily suspend that until the technical issues are resolved this evening, so that we can move forward. This is now a long motion, so that we can move forward with this meeting. But the motion itself is to temporarily suspend the broadcast and recording policy of OGP 3 for this evening.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Director LaLiberty and seconded by Director Yoakum that we temporarily suspend the section of OGP 3 that requires for us to broadcast all of our board meetings.
To be clear, just to clarify, it will not be recorded either. It's to broadcast. It's to suspend the requirement that in our policies that it be broadcast live, recorded, and posted to the district's website within 3 days. So until our technical issues are resolved,
Yes.
I move we suspend that policy.
For broadcasting and recording.
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
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 All those opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. We will then continue on with the agenda of our meeting for this evening. The next item on our agenda will be public comment. The Board of Directors of Lake Washington School District welcomes the public to the business meetings of the board and encourages community engagement. The board dedicates 30 minutes to hear from public during the public comment period of the meeting. Participants should not expect a response from the board at the end of their comments, as we dedicate this time to listening to your voice and would like to get as many members of the public an opportunity to speak as time allows. Members of the public can sign up to participate on the district website at lwsd.org/board/public comments. Sign up closes at noon on the day of the board meeting, and comments will be offered in the order of sign up. This evening, we have quite a few individuals that are signed up for public comment. Unfortunately, we will most likely not be able to listen to everyone's comments this evening. However, if you have a written version of your comments, please feel free to email them to the board. I'd like to also remind everyone here that this evening, during public comment, this is an opportunity to engage in dialogue, and it is also an opportunity to model respectful discourse to our community, even around extremely personal and difficult subjects. We ask that the audience refrain from commenting and from prolonged applause following each comment, as it takes up time and it prevents us from listening to as many speakers as we can fit into our dedicated 30 minutes. Once the public comment portion of our business meeting concludes, we ask that everyone who is not interested in listening to the rest of the agenda items exit quietly and in an orderly fashion so that we can continue the rest of our meeting. So we will go ahead and move forward with our public comments. We are beginning public comment at 7:20, and the first person that we have signed up is a virtual public comment, I believe. Is it Amber Owen Clifford?
Amber, if you can hear us, we're ready for your comment. You can begin when you're ready.
Thank you very much. The next person that we have signed up for a public comment this evening is Samantha Tall.
Can I start? It's on. Can I start? Okay. Thank you, members of the board. My name is Samantha. I'm a parent of 2 elementary level kids in Lake Washington School District. I've recently noticed the misinformation and partial information on PebbleGo regarding Israel. PebbleGo is a research tool used by our school district as a source of information for elementary kids' ages, an online kids level encyclopedia, if you will. However, almost every part there regarding Israel was containing partial information at best. For example, while Israel does border Egypt on its southwest, it also borders Jordan on the east, Syria on the northeast, and Lebanon on the north. None of this were mentioned. This information is just as important and just as valid as the border with Egypt, and gives broader knowledge of the area to the kids. Another example is where it says, and I quote, Israel calls Jerusalem its capital, where every other country or state in the world has a clear statement. For example, Beirut is the capital of Lebanon. Just the same, Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. There is a huge difference in the meaning, implying it's not a fact, yet something one can argue about. It's not debatable. Another part is the explanation of the UN decision of 2 regions. And jumping forward to say, and I quote again, instead, the area became one country called Israel in 1948. That information is completely false at this point. It neglects to mention the Arab countries voting against that UN resolution, the war that started the day after Israel declared itself a country, or the fact that the areas which were intended for the Arab Palestinians living in the region stayed under control of Jordan in the east and Egypt in the south, both Arab countries, until 1967. Those are facts. I understand wars are never an easy subject to talk about, especially when that information is meant for elementary-aged kids. However, misinformation or partial information can never be a good source for education about any topic, no matter how sensitive that topic is. I'm asking the board today to review the material and change it in a way that will reflect the truth and the history. If certain subjects are too sensitive, other information, such as our country's symbols, our flags, our currency, and so on, all of which can be explained while keeping distance from those sensitive information subjects. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. The next person we have signed up is Mital Tagore.
So I'll be replacing Maytal as well. And I thank you again, members of the board. Do I need to repeat introducing myself? Okay. October 7th had affected us all everywhere, Jews and Muslims, teachers, principals, this board, but most importantly, our kids. Looking at the communications from the board and the superintendent, from other employees of Lake Washington School District, from the principal, the teachers, I became aware of the way crisis is handled in our school district, and I'm extremely concerned about it. Let's start with the fact that October 7th, atrocious attack on Hamas on Israeli innocent civilians, starting a war, even though it's happening halfway around the world, is still a crisis here. Losing dear family members is never easy, but the quantity made it unbearable. These events didn't skip over our kids. While their everyday lives look to be the same, the emotional impact on them changed them as much as it changed us adults. And it came across in their schoolwork, in writing workshops, and in their emotional behavior. Sadly, teachers just didn't have the proper emotional tools to handle this kind of situation properly. And us parents were not contacted in a timely manner to handle the situation as well. As mentioned, us adults were impacted as well. We are not the same people as we were prior to October 7th. and the following war. However, we have been approached more than once as volunteers with demands without compassion and with absolutely no concern for our well-being, not even how are you or how is your family. This kind of behavior is not navigating the situation carefully as one might think. It's ignoring the situation all completely. When people act like that, especially adults who are in charge of the education of the kids, it makes me concerned about the lack of emotional workshops for all district employees for crisis situations. School shootings, bomb threats, and other similar crisis situations are sadly more commonly known in the United States. Like Washington School District employees, all of them should have the emotional tools to handle these situations, and therefore the current one as well, and know how to use the item when in need, and it is needed right now. I'm here asking the board to make sure all school district employees, including everyone in this room, will get the proper education on how to manage crisis situations properly for communicating better with both the kids and their parents. It can make a huge difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is Debbie Goldman. Next is Lee Zoe. Okay, moving on to Hagar Levi.
Hi, my name is Hagar Levi, or Hajar in Arabic. I'm an Israeli mother to 3 Israeli American children, 2 of which are students at Redmond High School. I came here today to discuss the experience of one of my children who has been receiving text messages bordering on harassment from fellow students at school. Contrary to what you might think, these students are no strangers to my child, who has considered them friends for quite a while. To protect my children's privacy, I'm refraining from sharing too many details about the text themselves, but I can tell you that their content reads very similar to comments that you would see on any Instagram post today. My child has trouble communicating and expressing feelings to family members, but it's clear that my child is deeply disturbed by the overly simplified rhetoric that labels all Israelis as European colonizers and oppressors. Given my child's family history and own first-hand experience, my child knows that the online discourse overly flattens the perception of Israeli society. My family immigrated to Israel from Morocco in the 50s in hopes of finding a place where they can live safely among other Jews. Many of them came from all corners of the Arab world. My family remains intimately connected to our Moroccan heritage and Arab culture more broadly. I grew up listening to Arabic music and watching Arabic films with my family. As a businessman in Israel, my father worked with Muslims often. He also employed Palestinians, took care of them, and even hosted them in his home when they needed a place to stay. Growing up, I did not see Palestinians as my direct enemies, so long as they did not directly endanger the safety of my family. I have raised my children with the same values and taught them both to respect other cultures and religions, as well as appreciate the pluralistic society within Israel. I believe it is unfair to expect children to explain the affairs of a government or military, especially in the midst of an ongoing war. The type of discourse that is being disseminated on social media and parodied by children is concerning and should be closely examined by school administrators. While it is clear that the school district cannot monitor the private conversation of students outside of school, teachers do have the responsibility to cultivate a classroom environment in which students are encouraged to share their unique experiences rather than simply regurgitate the same simplistic phrases disseminated on social media. I ask
If
that the
you could
board
wrap up your
pays
comments.
attention. I ask that the board pays attention to these interactions and their effect on the daily lives of students in this district. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Michael Keenan.
I'm not Michael Keenan, but I'll ask instead of speak instead of him. If that's okay. Closer, closer. I'm not Michael Keenan, but I was asked to speak instead of him. If that's okay. And I also have my own slot. So is it possible for me to speak for 6 minutes? So I'll just have to.
You'll
speak
have
really
3
fast.
minutes, and then if we get to your spot within our allotted 30 minutes, then you can speak for another 3. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry. My name is Yaniv Mordecai. I'm a parent of 3 kids in the Lake Washington School District Public Schools. Awesome. A recent Congress hearing left many confused. Is it okay to call for the genocide of Jews in school campuses? The answer is, of course, absolutely and unequivocally no. It's not a matter of context or politics. Calling for cleansing entire race or ethnicity, Hispanic, Black, Native American, and even Jewish, is a hate crime, especially when the callers keep saying that they mean what they say. While the 3 university presidents failed their exam on this topic, the U.S. moral value system, the Constitution, and a bipartisan wall-to-wall consensus all reject such calls. I have no doubt you all agree. Therefore, it coded messages to wipe Israel and its Jewish population off the map, such as free Palestine from the river to the sea, or Jews around the world, such as to globalize the Intifada, are accordingly genocidal. Falsely and cynically accusing Israel of white supremacy, apartheid, ethnic cleansing, colonizing, etc., aims to demonize Israel and legitimize violence against Israelis, echoing the 2 millennia-old racial, ethnic, and religious anti-Semitism. Debating civilly with the violent drum-beating mobs chanting such calls is not possible. Even listening to such calls is hard and stressful, especially for our kids. We therefore appeal to you to reaffirm your commitment to fighting anti-Semitism by issuing a clear statement that forbids genocidal anti-Semitic hate speech in the Lake Washington School District, and to work with the Israeli and Jewish community members to review, ban, and penalize expressions of such hate speech. Additionally, I think we need to move away from counter-educational balanced narratives. For example, teaching students in one of our public schools here that Jesus was born in, quote, Israel/Palestine. That's like teaching that George Washington was born in the United States/England in order to appease the 2 sides of the story, instead of teaching the geopolitical development in provinces around the world like Judea or Virginia. Please review social studies curricula, provide teachers with evidence-based resources and guidance for honest and unbiased teaching, and prevent unnecessary distortion of historical facts. Israel's story is still a great history lesson, if you will, that also echoes many of the moral values of the USA that the USA was founded upon. Centuries of Jewish presence in the land of Israel, then known as Palestine, kept the candle of Jewish nationhood alight and rationalized international recognition in the Jewish homeland. Israel was reborn from the ashes of the Holocaust, defeated 7 invading Arab armies, and opened its gates to millions of displaced Jews, including million Jewish refugees from Muslim countries. My own grandparents came to Israel from Morocco and Iran. Israel repeatedly fought its enemies, but also made peace with Egypt and Jordan, and recently, as you know, with 4 more Arab countries. Israel became prosperous, a thriving democracy, a startup nation, a top 20 economy, and a trusted ally of the USA. Israelis who fled Europe or the Middle East, like my grandparents, never bothered to look back, to wallow in self-victimization, or care for hereditary refugee status, unlike the Palestinians. I embody that example for that, standing here today in front of you. Israel constantly extended a hand in peace to its Palestinian neighbors, nationally, and I think many of us also personally, and was repeatedly met with hatred, violence, and terrorism, reaching a new peak of monstrosity on October 7, a day of horrific slaughter, a day of awakening and reckoning, just like September 11. Both events in the history of our nations are history lessons truly worth teaching our kids, and I hope you would consider teaching those events to our kids according to their age, of course. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next person we have signed up is Nihal Fahim. Okay. Amir Awad.
Hello, my name is Amir Awad, and I'm a senior in high school within the Lake Washington School District. I would first like to thank you for listening to my concerns. I'm a Palestinian American who has had many encounters with racism within the LWSD school district, some of whom I spoke about at the previous board meeting. However, today the issue I would like to address is the representation of Palestinians within school. I'm doing my absolute best to keep this as emotionless as possible. However, I do want to ask you guys, how many Palestinians need to be killed before we discuss this matter within school? We are reaching an unfathomable fatality count within this genocide, and I have still yet to heard a teacher speak on this. I understand the sensitivity of this subject, so I've decided to come up with a solution. The simplest and fairest basis of education would be informing students about all sides of this conflict. I urge both sides of this conflict to be covered to the utmost extent. Let the students be informed that 1,162 Israeli lives were taken through this conflict, 1/3 of which were military personnel. However, also do inform these students about the 23,084 lives taken in Gaza, 3/4 of whom being women and children. This is not my opinion, nor have I taken this from a website of bias. These are factual pieces of data, all listed on various websites. If you're wondering about those websites, here they are. Al Jazeera, United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, Committee to Protect Journalists, and the Jewish Telegraphic Agency. Anyone who wishes to deviate from these facts is not a believer of the truth, nor do they have the intentions of pure coverage to be broadcasted. I refuse to sit here any longer and watch as the school district stays silent while these horrific events in Gaza continue to unfold. I once more ask the Lake Washington School District to be active informers and educators, rather than ones who wait until present-day tragedies become past ones. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Rifat Fahim. Zena Badir. Sadia Khan. Gehad Abdel Hafez. Abdul Sathar Said. Mansur Manan. Siraj Lala. Mira Badarin. I'm sorry, I'm butchering names. I apologize. Radwa Abudina. Inaya Lala. Mohammed Ahmed. Navreen Malik. That one actually was a virtual. Do we have anybody else? Okay. Afnan Dalashe. Okay. Tasif Baik. Atik Mohammed. Sarah Demash. Machki, Nure Youssef, Majdi Badarin, Akla Khatri, no. Ala Badir, Munira Kratom. I know Arthur Weiner is here. Arthur Weiner.
Good evening, Lake Washington School Board members, Dr. Holman. My name is Arthur Weiner. My wife and I have 2 children in the Lake Washington School District. I've come before the board multiple times to explain my position that the district's budget is not sustainable. Why isn't the board demanding a balanced budget? Why not return to the 2018-2019 school year, just 5 years ago? I listened to the discussion earlier in the study session, and it's quite interesting to me how the district dances around the obvious. The district has a spending problem. The district has a spending problem. Our cost per student has skyrocketed, up 39% versus 2019. I respectfully submit that the mitigations proposed are not appropriate enough. Looking back at the 2018-2019 school year, comparing the the surplus budget, the surplus amount, right? So if the conversation is 5% appropriate, I'd say probably not. Looking at that school year, we had a fund balance of $60 million over the 5%. That was just 5 years ago. 5 years ago. We must address our spending if we're going to maintain our high quality education. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person we have is Noah Nabawi. Mia Tagore is virtual, so no. Erica Andrews. Yamini Shah. Alex Lee. And last was Samir Arora. Okay. We do not have any more people signed up for public comment this evening, so we will go ahead and conclude our public comment. Thank you. If you would like to exit, this would be the time. The next item on our agenda this evening is the approval of the January 8th, 2024 consent agenda. I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Holman, will you please, it has been moved by Director LaLiberty, seconded by Director Guthrie. Dr. Holman, will you please poll the board?
Yes, Director Guthrie,
Yes.
Director Yoakum,
Yes.
Director Stewart,
Yes.
Vice President LaLiberty,
Yes.
and President Choi.
Yes. Motion carries. Dr. Holman, will you please summarize the donations?
Yes, I will. So tonight in the board's packet, you have just over $88,000 of donations coming from our PTSA and from private sources. And so anytime we receive these types of donations, it is with significant gratitude that we accept these, because this allows us to provide unique programs and services and supports for students in our schools. So thank you to those that donated.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the Human Resources Program update. Dr. Holman.
All right, and so tonight we have an entire team here to provide the board with an update regarding our Human Resources Program. As the board knows, you approved operational expectation 4 on consent agenda in December. You also know that in OE 14, there's a lot of data about the personnel in the school district. And so tonight, the team is here to share an update around the department and probably introduce you to some new folks on the team. And so with that, I gladly hand this over to Dr. Joy Ross, our Associate Superintendent of Communications and Talent Acquisition.
To turn on the mic. Excellent. We are excited to be here this evening for so many reasons. And is this to... Okay, I'll get real close. We're just waiting to have the... Awesome, excellent. Just really excited to be with you this evening and have you hear about the work of HR. To Dr. Holman's point, you had the opportunity to see and discuss the results in OE4. And so this evening, you're going to hear from these amazing people about the actual work that happens on the ground each and every day within the HR department. And so today, when we were doing a run-through, Dr. Holman challenged me, and he said, "You like that picture because the young man has a sign that says, 'Hire me.'" And he challenges me often, which is fine. And I thought about, yes, and why else is that picture resonating so much with me? And I think about the village that is behind those students on that day of graduation. And I think we've all had the opportunity to participate and support graduation events. And the village behind those students, they mirror the village of HR in terms of the work that is done with the adults behind the scene. And I think that's another reason why that picture is really just so impactful to me. It also grounds us. It's our why. What's fascinating, too, is HR is a operational department. And so sometimes we're more further removed than the instructional side in the buildings. But that is not to say that the conversations that we are having, that you will hear evidence of tonight, don't often get really granular about those students and the adults that we support in the system to ensure that those students have a wonderful experience. So just wanted to set context as to why that picture. And then it's a picture of us. And to Dr. Holman's point, there's some new faces here on this team. And just like there's some new faces here in the board, and that's not uncommon when we think about our national workforce. And so the changes that we have had created opportunity, and they also required that we look really thoughtfully about who we are as a leadership team of the Human Resources Department for the Lake Washington School District. Just very cognizant of what the responsibility is that's associated with that. And so this is us. A very diverse group, experientially, private industry, different sectors within industry. And so you're going to hear how those different experiences and levels of exposure are influencing and impacting the work of the HR team. Because we're new, really wanted to be intentional on figuring out who we were. Wanted to ensure that we had common language about the things that we believed in, the things that we valued, and how we would show up in the system. And so spent quite a bit of time this summer. Again, Dr. Holman teased us because he says we're loud, and we laugh and we have a lot of fun, and that's okay, because we were next door in his superintendent's conference room. I think we've been barred, but that's okay. But we spent time talking about values. And so the top right-hand slide are those real general ones, but important ones about being ethical, about empowering people, having an appreciation for confidentiality, obviously wanting to ensure that we provide excellent customer service. So like those were high level things that were important to us as human beings that we wanted to have show up in the work. And then we drilled a little bit more. Like, what would those drivers be of the work of education? And we came up with several, and the ones that we're going to highlight this evening are around compliance, because HR is very compliant-driven, around strategic partnerships, and then this commitment to continuous improvement. As we think about how this world, how this workforce continues to evolve, how do we continue to keep our mind on improving? What does that conversation look like? And so those are the drivers that we are functioning as lifting to the surface. And ultimately, we want to create experiences that elevate the employees. And when you think about the work of HR, sometimes that's challenging, because sometimes they're real hard decisions and hard conversations. But if we are able to treat people with dignity and grace, regardless of the situation, I think we would definitely elevate the employee's experience. So tonight you're going to hear from three major prongs of work within the HR team, specifically as it relates to talent acquisition, and that would be Directors Cedar and Ellison. Labor relations, and that would be Dr. Richard Patterson, and then operationalizing CBAs, which come out of our Director of Operations prong, would be Michael Clark. And we have a new director, Craig Michaels, and he's so new, he doesn't even have to talk tonight. Like, he's just here to support the team, which interestingly was Michael's circumstance last year. So, so excited for you to hear about the work. This team is phenomenal. I'm going to shout them out at the end, but I think you're going to get a good idea of the work on the ground that goes back to that first picture in terms of that village behind the adults that support those kids. So without further ado, Meliza and Zakia.
So we're going to tag team this so we can stand side by side and move on. So very excited, Zakia Sita, to be able to share with you just some of the work we have been doing and that we're really leaning into. And as Dr. Ross mentioned, this past summer we really were able to take a step back. And as you see here, talent acquisition realigned. We envisioned how could we service the district in a different way. And that's kind of where we landed on really leaning into the strategic partnership and doing this learning community division and being able to support the district by learning community and really allowing us to improve how we deliver service, best services to our educational community, also creating a continuity across the system as well. And this allows us to better understand the learning communities, really partner with the building administrators, and also be able to lean into how we can learn and better support our area of focus. And so we'll share a little bit about that. And so we're going to talk about strategic partnership, continuous improvement, and compliance, and how we're applying that this past year and to come. And so on this slide here, you can see we did divide the district by 4 learning communities, which was already how we were set up. I am covering the blue areas, which is Redmond Learning Community, Lake Washington Learning Community, and also supporting the Resource Center. And Meliza has the gold. And so really just wanted to give you a big picture of what that looks like in the schools that includes. And then we'll talk a little bit more about how that support is being delivered.
Awesome. So diving into strategic partnership, the first piece around breaking into that learning community model was getting out to the schools. So Zakia and I are about 2/3 of the way through school visits, which has been really engaging, meeting with principals who have invited us mainly to their admin meetings, so getting to sit down with Dean of Students, associate principals, office managers, admin interns, and just hear from them directly. What are their hiring priorities? What are their wonderings, their feedback on the process, on our applicant tracking system, Frontline? We talked about pipeline. pipelines, our substitute pipeline, our student teacher pipeline. How are we thinking about sort of weaving all of those experiences together to improve? We've also lifted from these visits, to Zakia's point, what's different by learning community, and how can we meet their needs more specifically and individually, but then also take a step back and see what makes sense for us as a whole system. I do want to highlight our focus on these strategic partnerships also supports Area Action 4 of the Principal Support Framework to develop effective partnerships between central office and principals, aligning with the Wallace Foundation research around equity-driven school leaders, experiences, and outcomes. So I'll pass it off to Zakia next for the remaining piece on strategic partnership.
So in addition to that, we just listed some of the areas in which what this looks like. And so again, some of the streamlining of the processes that we've already kind of rolled out are talent acquisition processes with hiring tools and updates and improvements, interview support tools for building admin. In addition to that, when we talked about getting out in the community and engagement with the goal of just equity at the forefront and access to recruitment opportunities, we really decided to build brand awareness and engage community in a different way. And that meant getting out specifically in the Juanita learning community where we saw a deficit in the classroom support roles. We actually got out and foot to the ground and did not only community events, but also went into apartment complexes, community spaces like libraries, restaurants, and just engaged community in a different way to share with them the opportunities outside of teaching that they can get involved in, and actually saw an increase in vacancies that was about 40% just within the classroom support roles. We were able to really engage community, and we also did some application support events at the Redmond Library and at Kirkland Library, which engaged about 25 applicants for each workshop. And it just gave people an opportunity to ask questions of us and get the hands-on approach to really supporting them with how to complete an application. In addition to that, of course, just some of the other events. There's hiring events, of course, still showing up to college fairs, career fairs, partnering with community partners and organizations like HopeLink and doing some of their career events, and even engaging them in a monthly workshop where we just go over the different opportunities that we have that they can share with their participants. And in addition to that, what else? Redmond Resource Fair in partnership with the library. And just with that, we also have been doing some spotlight videos. So there's a QR code up there, and that's just another way to highlight video opportunities within the system. And those are being shared on LinkedIn. So if you were to scan that, you could see what that looks like. We've done spotlight videos for substitutes, for classroom support, and we also just did one recently that Meliza will share a little bit about. And so just wanted to share just a quick tip or a quick number, which was within commercial job boards, we've seen that as a source that's really elevated over the past year, from 14.7% of applicants to 16.6% of our applicants are coming from those job boards, and then local sources. So just from us getting out in the community, we've saw an increase of about 1%, which is 4.2% to 5.2% of just applicants coming from us doing that outreach.
Awesome. And just to add, it might seem like a percentage point is maybe not that much, but we had over 5,700 applicants last year. So 1 percentage point to us is a huge deal. Mm-hmm. So really impressive work. So to Zakia's point about the video spotlights that we've done, I would encourage you to take a look at those later. Most recently last week was a spotlight of a current 7th grade science teacher that started at our district as a paraeducator, went through our student teaching program, then was a substitute for us, and now is a science teacher. So just trying to highlight more of those stories of what's possible and how we support folks through our Pathways program, which is what I wanted to touch on next. So the Pathways program covers both student teaching and alternative routes to teacher certification. And we've got sort of 3 big goals we're focused on in the next, or in this year to come. One being around recruitment. So the transition for student teachers into full-time work with us, and how can we prepare them for opportunities to come and open roles, and the timing behind all of that. 2 is program diversity. So we've actually doubled. So about a third of our student teachers right now are also classified employees. And that's doubled. It was about 16%. Now it's over 30% just in the last school year alone. So really trying to dive into that pipeline and see how can we encourage more of our classified employees to go into the alternative routes program. And then thirdly is engagement. So one mechanism we're using to better engage that population is through surveys, so that we are really getting their feedback before their time student teaching with us is over. So there's new surveys coming the end of this month for our student teachers, our mentor teachers, and building admins as well, to get all of those perspectives together. All right, so next here, just wanted to highlight a quote from SHRM, the Society of Human Resource Management. Real quick here, studies have shown 42 days is the average job vacancy length nationwide, yet top candidates are only in the job market for 10 days, and a staggering 50% of candidates are fielding multiple job offers. So our time to fill actually does align really well to that same 42 days on average. And some of our roles that are dwelling longer than that also align to just industry trends, such as nursing. Some of those roles are a little bit more difficult to fill due to the competition of the folks that are in that market. And due to just how much competition is out there, it's all the more important that our processes on the talent team are as efficient as possible. So moving to our next slide here. Wanted to talk about the hiring briefs that we put out this last, fall and winter. So hiring briefs for these 5 groups: classified, certificated, administrator, paraeducator, and instructional assistant, as well as coaches. And what these hiring briefs were these one-page documents, so it's the one where you see all the steps listed, but just so that it was really clear who owns each step and what needs to happen within them, and then links to any documents or resources you might need throughout the process. So sort of compliance against these briefs was a really big piece of us trying to meet that quick time to fill and turnaround that we're seeing. Also, we've just wanted to sort of double down on the ways that we're getting the word out about our jobs, because time is of the essence. So you'll see in the upper corner here a flyer that we put out. It ended up going to about 35,000 families and over 15,000 volunteers across the district. And we very quickly saw it getting picked up on Facebook groups. So there was the Seattle Families of Color reposted the flyer. So it was really great to see how quickly word was spreading and applicants flow in through that. So with that, I think that concludes our talent portion, so I will pass it off to Dr. Patterson for labor relations.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us back again this year. Great to see you again, and some of you for the first time. Richard Patterson. We decided when we had the opportunity of really looking at employee and labor relations, the way it was structured in the district, to take a different approach to it. We are in a transition period where we've actually split employee from labor relations in that sense. We were certificated employee and labor relations on one side, and Jared Kelly was the classified guy on the other side. I'm grateful that Craig is here now to really help get this new vision and new approach underway. We really did that, though, to really narrow the focus, to really look into better opportunities for improvement, for innovation, for really getting to look across all labor unions, for example. And, the patterns and things I've already begun to see, even though this is still a transition period, are pretty interesting. We have 11 unions that we work with. We have 4 big ones because of the size of the employee groups. LWEA, LWESP, the Teamsters, and SEIU. Compliance, as Dr. Ross stated earlier, it is right at the center of everything, and in this new role is very much about CBAs and really bringing those collective bargaining agreements to life. So if you think about Here you have, pages and pages of things, and you look at these words, and we have to make that happen, right? With not only just the black and white letters that are on the page, but to really bring that to life in many ways. So I'd like to just quickly go through the frame of the work in unified approaches that bring the CBAs to life, the partnerships that are absolutely critical that build trust in that, and then processes that promote collaboration. When I think of that first, the green one there, I really, as I was reflecting on this weekend around the fact that it is absolutely critical to always keep the entire system in mind as we do the work, because so much of the work pulls you into the weeds and pulls you into the details. But as any leader knows, that when you're moving through an entire organization and an entire system, it's important to pull yourself out of the weeds and really think about the next approach, and that is the impact that it has on the system. So we think about that. Recent conversations with Ms. Posthumus, with Barbara and Dr. Ross, really spelling things out and looking at, is this a cost change? Is this a language change? And then from there, what's the research? There's so much about that impact, whether it's cost analysis, whether it's what processes that need to be in place, all of those things. It's absolutely critical to really keep that notion of impact always front and center. And oftentimes, honestly, it goes to what's been our past practice, and sometimes there isn't any. So we have to establish a new practice depending upon what it was that we bargained and what we're initially going to set out to do. The last part of the green one there is about systems change, and this is oftentimes what we do around project management and the ways in which we communicate, and most often there's a redesign in the system. Somehow, some way, or there's a new design that happens in the system. So we look at partnerships that build trust. I think of this dynamic that is constantly happening. I mentioned this systems level to down on the ground and really looking at those individual and discrete actions. But there's also this really important component of the internal and external groups in which you engage with. So in that, then, I go to the next one, and that is the absolute necessity of being a generalist, because there's so much when you think about all the components that happen through labor relations and bringing all of this to life to support employees, ultimately to make the best and most important impact on our students. Then you start out in this generalist, fact-finding, investigation kind of mode, and then suddenly, through leading, through interactions, through all the collaboration that you have with people, you become more and more of an expert in that field. So those things just continue to build and grow. And then obviously one of the most important things with building trust in partnerships is this mutual accountability. We have to commit to what we say. We have to follow through on those things. It's absolutely critical. Remaining confidential, being consistent, and that level of transparency is really, really important. Last one there, the blue one, processes that promote collaboration. One of the approaches that we use with our LWEA folks is interest-based bargaining, where we tell the stories, right? We really lay out our interests. We look at, from those interests, our options, and then we derive the outcomes from that. And at the end of the day, it's this mutual sort of way that we can benefit each other in it. There are a variety of labor management meetings and committees throughout the course of every week. And then, when bargaining happens and you have the collective bargaining agreement is finished, the work is not done. As a matter of fact, there's so much that still needs to actually be brought to life to be operationalized. So we have a number across each of the unions, work groups and committees in that. But almost every time that we bargain a new contract, there's more than likely a process improvement or a process change that takes place. I want to introduce Michael Clark. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Patterson, and good evening, Board. It's an honor to be with you all. I'm excited to share some of the ways that we are elevating the employee experience in operations for all of our groups through that focus on compliance and strategic partnership and continuous improvement. Operations is interesting because it's vast. We touch everybody in the system, from classified to certificated to our administrative staff. And so over the past year, we've really placed a focus on streamlining our systems so that our employees can access tools and focus on the most important work, which is work with students and families. In particular, I'm excited to share with you the processes we've done around updating our leave process. And not just because it's a smooth, efficient system, which as operations, I love a smooth, efficient system. But this is about more than that. This is about taking care of people. When an employee reaches out to us with a leave request, it can be a pretty straightforward affair, but it can also be a very challenging, complex moment for an employee and their family. And so when someone reaches out to us, I want to make sure that the process is easily accessible, it's crystal clear, and that our employees come away with the sense that they were taken care of, that they were supported in a moment that we needed them. So to accomplish that, we worked very carefully with our partners in payroll and business services to update the form, but that's just the first order change. Clarify the language, make it easier to fill out. We focused on streamlining our communications so that there's one email address. Email us at Leafs, we'll take care of you from there. And we buffered up the amount of interdepartmental communication we have so that nobody falls through the cracks, whether it is human resources facing or payroll facing. We got you, so that when employees are in a need of a leave, they know that we have supported them. And the result around that has been a smoother process for our employees. In addition to that, we updated our remedies process for our certificated staff members. That was a great experience. That involved data services, business services, our administrators, our association partners, to again streamline the system for collecting and distributing data so that our employees are paid as accurately as possible, and that we have a data tool that Cabinet can use for our current and future planning. And today is the day that we shared with our district leadership team our updated employee-initiated transfer process. So this brand new process it was very exciting working with talent acquisition, and it meets all of the facets of the CBA, and it's going to broaden opportunities for our employees. It's going to broaden options and opportunities for our current existing employees to apply for different positions. And right now, with a step in the present and moving forward, we are in the process in our division of our transition to cumulative and gearing up for that, because that time will come and it'll come soon. So making sure that we know the new system, that we are practicing the new system, that we have business rules around that. So when it's time to go, we are ready to hit the ground running. So thank you. Really excited about the work of the operations division, and we are just going to, the best is yet to come. We're just starting our streamlining of our processes. Thanks.
Thank you, Michael. I speak often about how exciting it is to work with this team, and I'm glad you get to see why. Sometimes when people talk about excitement, they think, oh, it's fluff. This is the thinking, this is the passion, this is the innovation, this is the desire to create systems where employees feel that they're taken care of. Because ultimately we want Lake Washington to be considered to be an employer of choice. And so I just thought that this New Year's text from Michael Clark, who is the kindest human being in the whole wide world, he sent that out. What you don't see is all of the text that came before. But this is the kind of passion and commitment that these people bring each and every day. And so I thank you for who you are and how you show up. I love working with you. I feel grateful to have the opportunity to lead this team. And so I hope that you've been able to see the work that is being done, the people behind the work, and certainly have a really good idea as to what we can expect. To Michael's point, I truly think the best is yet to come. So thank you for your engagement. If you have questions, comments, feedback, we'd love to continue the conversation. Thank you so much.
Any questions, comments, or feedback? Yes, Director Guthrie.
I'm curious, from a talent acquisition standpoint, how do you think about the employees that we need to have tomorrow to support the initiatives that we're working on as a district? I was really excited to see this year, start of the school year, the special education team at my elementary school sent out an email introducing themselves. There were 2 new special education teachers, and they both called out that they wanted to come to Lake Washington because of our work around inclusion. And that was just wonderful to see as a parent, wonderful to see as, I guess, a brand new board member at the time. So thinking about that particular specific initiative, the creativity that's required, the knowledge that's required, and how do you think about bringing in people who are hopefully excited to plug into that and to really troubleshoot truth?
I'm going to start and invite Meliza and Zakia to come and share as you're led, no pressure. The first thing I thought about as you said that was the story of schools and the importance of being able to share your story and what that looks like in the onboarding of somebody who is new. And so you mentioned, the person came in and they were welcomed, and so somebody connected with them. And so ensuring that we have systems that help people to get connected very quickly so that they're not new in a district and not knowing how to navigate. And then representing our story, our expectations, and how it is that we are going to be intentional to build their capacity so that they can be successful. I think with the learning communities model, really understanding schools, communities, is going to position us to be able to tell a story passionately, because we're looking for passionate educators. We're not looking for people who just want a job. There are a lot of places that they can get that. And so that's the first thing, Director Guthrie, that comes to mind for me as you asked that question. Anybody else want to add something? Don't be shy. Come on.
2 things that come to mind for me in thinking about that. One is really authenticity in our candidate experience. So we put a lot of thought around and got a lot of feedback from the system around what is it like when a candidate comes through? What are they saying about the process from even when they start to apply? Is it easy to go through? Are we transparent about our values? And then when you come in, sort of what are those conversations like, and how on the talent team can we keep that brand really, really strong? It is strong, so that helps. We get a lot of interested candidates, and so it's just getting that authenticity through the process and then into the onboarding for sure. And then to your other point around sourcing, we talk about that on a daily basis. So how are we elevating using technology that's available to us to get the word out and get in front of the right group? So we plant a lot of seeds, whether that's at job fairs and events, on different job boards, engaging, networking, developing in our pipelines that are short term and some that are longer term, right? Thinking about our student teachers, that investment comes back maybe a year later, maybe a couple years later. So just trying to be really thoughtful about how we go about our sourcing and planting a lot of those seeds in various places. So. Did you add anything? Okay, thank you.
Director Yocum.
Thank you very much. I actually went back over this weekend and watched your presentation from last year, and just having the whole team here and your energy and your ability to work together, it's really inspiring. And I'm like taking notes of, as a board, how can we do this?
Thank you.
One of the things that was actually mentioned last year, and I know some of you are new, but kind of started off the presentation with talking about there are these kind of shifts in expectations, kind of like post-pandemic. And now there's sort of more of this focus on employees a desire for more a focus more on mental health, and I think you said like flexible hybrid scheduling and belonging. And so I'm wondering, I love how you are going out into the schools, and I'm wondering if when you are out there meeting with admin, are you able to address those? Are you able to see, or is there any information you have of maybe what has kind of been done around those areas this past year as things have shifted, or what are you seeing in schools around those areas when you go out and meet with admin?
Yeah, I'll share. Right off the top, I think earlier last year, we had several requests from staff members around affinity spaces, and very different affinity spaces than historically had been in place before. And so I know that Director Patterson worked collaboratively with the Equity Department and started conversations around, to your point, spaces that were requested by employees, because that's also important, right? And creating those opportunities for people to learn together, to collaborate, to have the opportunity to share pillars of identity that are important for them, to then feel a sense of belonging. And so those are things that we still see are sort of being lifted to the top. And that comes to mind right away when I think about from last year, one of the areas. Anybody add anything to that?
Thank you for the question. One of the really important projects that is about to be resurrected, it started toward the last semester of last year, was House Bill 1363 that has to do with adult mental health. So Jared had put together the initial committee members for that, and it's right around the corner for me to get that up and going again. So I look forward to next year providing you with some really good data around that actually being in operation.
I would also add, we have an employee assistance program that is available to every employee in the district. It's confidential counseling support. And one of the things we did during the pandemic when we were looking at working conditions and working with our association was, how can we make that as available as possible to our staff? And so we actually built language into our COVID contracts that there was some additional flexibility for accessing EAP, Employee Assistance Program supports. Since that time, we've sent information out to staff, and while we have talked about EAP before, people are still, for the first time, or still saying, oh, I didn't know this was available to me. And so continuing to share that information with our staff, because we want our staff to be able to access those supports for all of the varying things that come up in personal and professional lives. And so I know the HR team works with our EAP provider. They receive data around how many employees are accessing, not who is accessing, but number of employees. And I know during the pandemic we saw a pretty significant rise in the number of employees that were accessing it, and we want our employees to have that support. So that's another resource I know that staff can access.
Yeah, and I just got some data, and last year this time, we've increased our utilization efforts by 42%. And so I think that speaks to, A, the need, but also the opportunity to respond. And to Dr. Holman's point, we don't know who. We just know that people are taking advantage. What we are also seeing is new requests from schools to come to do trainings. And so that is an additional service that EAP is offering. Sometimes that's a little less attractive because people are there, and some people just like the opportunity to confidentially reach out. But they have also seen an increase in terms of principals who reach out and say, hey, I'm seeing this, how can you come in and do some larger training?
Any other questions? I had one question, and that was, you mentioned going out into splitting your responsibilities by learning communities and going out, and you mentioned one trend, and I was just kind of curious if you are seeing any other trends in terms of staffing needs that are different between our learning communities, or is it similar across the board? Just out of curiosity.
Okay. So the trends have been pretty consistent when it comes to what we talked about as far as classroom support roles, substitute needs, and that's something that we both, when we've entered into a spreadsheet and can look at what people are saying has been a consistent theme that we have seen across all learning communities, was really that high need for classroom support roles and that deficit there. And was there anything else that you wanted to
Another
highlight?
thing that I have seen is when you look at some of the classroom support, specifically like paraeducator, it can really depend by the a proximity to affordable housing in relation to that school. So that's some of the feedback that we've started to look at is like, this school never really has, as many para openings as this school. What could be the difference? And that's been just some of the anecdotal feedback, is this school is in a proximity that's just a little bit more, maybe it's easier to commute to, maybe it's easier to find housing in that area. So again, just seeing like, what is that feedback and how do we kind of put it together to kind of get things moved forward and full roles. So that's just been kind of an interesting nugget so far.
And the other one that jumped out to me as we're speaking was just part of why these hiring briefs were so important was just ensuring that across the system that everyone had support tools, had interview tools, and were just really equipped for the hiring process. And so that was the other thing, was really ensuring that they know how to use the tools that we have in place and that we really had those training documents in place for them to be able to use and streamline that process for everybody.
One of the things that we're looking to do is to offer job fairs by learning community to get a true assessment as to the capacity of that community to potentially provide workforce. It's a very different targeted approach, and so exciting to see what patterns are lifted in that experience, and I think we'll have additional information in ways that we've not had before, and so that's one of the things that we're planning for the upcoming year. And we are so over our time. Sorry, not sorry. Thank you all so very much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I know. The next item on our agenda is the monitoring of OE13 or OE3 treatment of community stakeholders. It is one of our 14 operational expectation policies. Through these policies, the board establishes its values about how the school district is expected to operate and the express conditions that must exist as business is conducted. The monitoring reports contain the superintendent's interpretation of policy language, a review of current conditions and monitoring data. The monitoring actions make up part of the board's oversight of the organization and assures the board that its operational standards have been met. Following the presentation, the board will have an opportunity for questions and comments. Dr. Holman, will you please present a summary of the monitoring report?
And is it a surprise our human resources team has a lot to say? The folks we asked to engage with the humans, so appreciate them. And tonight I am presenting Operational Expectation 3. I appreciate the questions I've received and the asterisks at the end saying, I know we're reviewing this and I know we're going to look at this. And even last year when I presented on this, we knew this wasn't the final version of the board's values and policy. And so I present it tonight. The policy statement says that the superintendent shall maintain an organizational culture that treats families and members of the community with respect, dignity, and courtesy. There are 5 distinct policy components that we'll look at tonight. One of these policy components is listed as not in compliance, and the overall report is presented as in compliance with exceptions noted. In 3.1, it states that the superintendent will protect confidential information. There's a few indicators for compliance, and this is rated as in compliance. A summary of the findings from the report that the board received, I believe, almost 2 months ago at this point. An overarching statement around the security of our technology and technology systems, that it's all password protected and appropriate user securities for the individuals and the systems that are in place to protect confidential information. We also have policy that we review and maintain related to the use, access, and dissemination of information, be it storage, retention, and safety of that information. In 3.2, it states that the superintendent will effectively handle complaints, and I appreciate the questions I received about this. We've had quite a bit of conversation about the word complaints and like, how do you even narrow in on data that helps the board understand how we're responding to the various aspects of complaints. And this really is about quote-unquote uniform complaints, so anything that falls into a kind of a formal complaint process that is documented, that is formally reported, that we have timelines, that there's a formal response. That really are the complaints that we've narrowed in on in terms of our indicators. And so at a high level, staff respond to complaints. Over time, we have done a better job of disseminating who responds to what complaints, and if we get certain types of complaints, there's a team that gets together to make sure that we know who's actually taking the lead on a specific complaint. And a lot of times, it's when those complaints involve issues related to Title IX, gender discrimination, sexual harassment, and there's possibly issues with students and or staff, and just making sure that everybody knows who's taking the lead on those things, because Title IX for this compliance is related to students. But you can imagine when there's a Title IX complaint, it can have tentacles into other aspects and other compliance areas. And so specifically, we receive formal complaints under Title IX, HIB, which is harassment, intimidation, and bullying, civil rights, which encompasses all aspects of discrimination, Section 504. Special education actually has 3 distinct complaint processes. One is Federal Office of Civil Rights, one is the due process procedure, and one is an OSPI complaint procedure related specifically to special education. And then as a district, we have Administrative Policy 4220, which is the patron's grievance process. So all of these have various, I'll just say, due process requirements. And so we continue to work through those. The data is in the report that provides information about responses that were within timelines. I did receive a question I think that is worth noting, a question about what does it mean that something is complete? And for us, complete means that we have followed the process, that we've conducted an appropriate investigation, and that we've provided a response. And that feels like a low level of completion, but at times an individual may not get the answer they're looking for, even though that's a completed process. And for all of these various complaint procedures, there's an appeal process. And so 9 times out of 10, it is required by law that we provide individuals with their appeal rights and that information along with our response. And so at the end of the day, responses are within timelines, and we notify individuals of those timelines from the outset. 3.3 states that the superintendent will protect against any retaliation and illegal discrimination. And so the indicator of compliance really does focus on the policies, the administrative policies that govern this. And we do maintain a whole series of policies related to retaliation and illegal discrimination. Oftentimes in the complaint procedures, there's concern that's brought forward of, based on this complaint, I don't want there to be retaliation against me as an individual, my child, and those kinds of things. And so there's language that we use when we are closing complaints, be it someone who was found to have had a negative interaction or not compliant with our policies, letting them know that retaliation does lead to further action by the district. 3.4, I'm not going to read the entire thing, but it's really about maintaining a systemic organizational culture. And the indicators really have focused on our staff. And these indicators are from a tool that we used, I believe we concluded using this 2 or 3 school years prior. We're using the Panorama survey, and so you receive some of that Panorama data in the report. It's the compliance rating should actually be not in compliance. I apologize for that. The color was correct. So the color changed from blue to burnt orange. I'm not sure. There's no meaning behind the color. But we do provide this information annually as we're providing our annual report to the community. We did transition to the Panorama survey, which does a couple of things for us. It's aligned with the data collection that we use with our students and families. We can use similar question banks to find some commonalities between. And the data that was provided in the report, albeit not the 9 characteristics of highly effective schools, which if you taught in the district previously, you probably participated in that. But on the Panorama survey, the overarching, are you satisfied with your experience? Staff consistently report high levels of satisfaction. And again, reporting the neutral and the neutral and the favorable and neutral combined 59, 84% for instructional staff, 72, 90% of non-instructional staff reporting an overall neutral or positive school environment. And there's much more data in the overall report. And 3.5 states that the superintendent will actively encourage community volunteers. As I'm sure you're aware, during COVID, we had no volunteers in our schools, and with that, so many people let their volunteer status lapse, rightfully so. And so, we're glad to see a huge return of our volunteers back into our schools. We have a process centrally that all volunteer applications are screened, evaluated, and approved. If they're not approved, we have specific outreach to those individuals to let them know of that. This probably seems more substantial than it is. We had an increase in approved volunteers by 42%. Pre-pandemic, that would have been like something had to have happened. This really is about getting back to baseline to where we were pre-pandemic. And so excited that our families can be back in our schools participating. And so, again, this report is presented as in compliance with exceptions noted, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Dr. Holman. Are there any questions or points of clarification in regard to the information that has been presented for OE3? Yes, Shivani.
Okay, so I just correct me if I'm I don't know if I say something that isn't quite accurate, but under 3.2, it's about the complaints that students kind of I guess, complain about. Sorry. Do you have student perspectives on how they feel these complaints are handled, especially because I have heard students who feel as though their complaints under, I think it was like HIB, which is harassment, something else, bullying. I have heard, especially on social media, that students feel as though like their opinions are not validated to a satisfactory degree. So I'm wondering, like, you know, currently this policy is under like in compliance, but it's like in an objective way kind of, where it's like, oh, like this, the complaint is registered, it's been like reviewed, but there's no really like, do students feel as though this is satisfactory? And I was just wondering, because the rest of, you know, like the subsections of this policy have subjective kind of data where they're like, oh, like 100% of staff say like this and this, but for this part we don't have like the actual student perspective who are, you know, filing these complaints, and to actually see like, does this meet like their needs? Because at the end of the day, like that is what this policy is for, right? Like meeting the student needs, but we don't have that data. Like we just have, oh, like this complaint was filed and we looked at it, but not really like to a satisfactory degree. So.
I feel like you are preempting our next study session, Shivani, because right now we're evaluating both OE3 and OE9 because we know that this isn't meeting the values or the information that the board wants related to community engagement and these types of issues. And so with that, I will take that as a note as I meet with Deputy Superintendents Beebe and Gillingham as we prepare for the next study session and bring the board back information around the policy discussion we had. I believe it was in December at our study session, because as we think about, and that's kind of my point around, you know, that bar of completion feels inadequate. And I think that's what you're getting at is, yes, you know, in most of the time, that adequacy level of complete has been a very, very thorough process, and, you know, a report and, you know, speaking with, you know, all of those affected and things like that. When our students are going through the HIB process, harassment, intimidation, and bullying, those are complex situations because proving some of those is really, really challenging. And if our students are walking away saying, I wasn't heard, I wasn't valued, it didn't meet my needs, then was that really a successful experience and report? Probably not. And so really appreciate that comment, and we'll make sure to bring that forward next study session. Thank you.
Questions, Director Guthrie.
There was also a significant decrease in reports of HIB incidents specifically from 51, I think it was last year, to 8 this year. Are there any hypotheses as to why? Did people just get nicer to each other?
I won't go quite there. I saw that question and didn't have a chance to see if others had hypotheses. What I do know is the prior year, which would have been 21-22, as students were transitioning back, as adults were transitioning back, we saw the largest escalation of behavior, mental health, poor social interactions that we had ever seen. And so the number of reports coming back from the pandemic was more than we had ever seen. I was just talking to Dr. Ross about you know, our staff, you know, complaints and investigations way down from prior years. I think human behavior has gotten to probably a better place than it was previously. Knock on wood. And then my wonder is, are people then just not reporting things as well? And I don't know how to validate that concern that I have, because we want people to be making reports if there are issues that are that they need to bring forward.
In regards to this process, I guess, how do you ensure that the steps for handling a complaint have been done done appropriately according to law and district policy.
So we have a compliance officer for each of the discrimination categories. Let me see if I can, off the top of my head. So Title IX, John Applegate is the director who's been charged with managing all Title IX complaints. So if there's a formal complaint around Title IX, he would follow through with that. Or if there's sexual harassment of a student, then he also is required to conduct an investigation into that. So he is the holder of that policy. He's the holder of that responsibility. We have our discrimination compliance officer. That's Craig Michaels that you met this evening. He joined the district about a month ago. And so we have people for each of these that hold the requirements. Dr. Ross then would have responsibility over employee discipline investigations under the discrimination complaints. Dale Cody has responsibility over Title IX because it falls under athletics and activities. And so it's just ensuring that there's layers of accountability through the system and that there's processes in place to be able to make sure that we are responding in a timely manner.
Questions? Okay. Hearing no more questions, thank you, Dr. Holman, for the overview and the clarifications. Now it is the board's responsibility to consider the report as evidence of the district's performance in this area of operation. A reminder of the criteria we have agreed to. 1, that the superintendent interpretation of the current policy as written is reasonable. And 2, the superintendent has provided evidence to assure the board that the organization is in compliance with the provisions of the policy. I will now entertain a motion to accept and approve the monitoring report as compliant with the exceptions noted.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved by Director LaLiberty and seconded by Director Yoakum that the board accept and approve the monitoring report as compliant with exceptions noted. Is there any further discussion? Director LaLiberty.
I think what? Okay. All right. I think so. I will vote to approve the report as in compliance with the exceptions noted. I think that this particular report, this particular policy, needs a lot of work to get it into alignment with what we want. I can't remember. Have we had a study session on this already? I don't want to repeat too much. Okay. Just a few comments on the I guess the policy and the indicators. Too many of the indicators are process oriented, sort of the checking a box type thing that I don't think really tells us as a board anything or the community as to whether these policies are in fact in compliance. It's what we agreed to previously. It's what we've done now for a few years, but I think we need to really rework these. In particular, 3.2, I appreciate Shivani's comments. I agree with them. I think we need to look hard at having an indicator of compliance that has student perception data. It doesn't necessarily have to be a survey, but I think having that voice as part of that is important. And then I guess it's sort of another general overarching comment for the board, for all of us. I think when I look at this policy, and it's titled Treatment of Community Stakeholders, but very little of the policy itself actually is external looking. And so I know that's an interest that we have, but I think when we look at reworking this policy, I will try to remember these words that I'm saying now, because I think it's important.
Director Yoakum. Director Guthrie.
Yes, agree with Director Liberty that the district has done a fabulous job of providing what a previous board agreed to, but there's definitely some need to rework things here. Yeah, and I really loved what Michael Clark just said about a form and how that's more than just a form. It's really about giving people the feeling that we've got you. And when I look at this, when I hear from Shivani, I don't think we're communicating that to our community stakeholders quite yet. Even just really simple things like these forms that we literally ask people to fill out. I was salivating a little bit over the form that Michael had screenshotted in his presentation that looked like an online form with fillable fields versus a PDF that's buried in a procedure in our policies that then needs to presumably be printed or somehow manipulated. It doesn't communicate that we've got you. So that's one thing. Also thinking about the fact that there's no preamble. Again, that's work for us to do as a board to communicate what do we actually mean by treatment of community stakeholders. Because we're bopping around here from handling sexual harassment complaints to encouraging community volunteers, and I'm honestly a little bit lost. So yes, again, absolutely no issues with the report as presented, but definitely some work to do here.
Director Yoakum.
So I appreciate, Dr. Holman, what you said about the handling complaints, 3.2, and kind of going more in that these are the uniform formal complaints. And I think, having read like the written or oral statements, I'm thinking as totally informal complaints, and it's, we have very few of them, but as it is the formal process, or the formal complaints. But I also wonder if, as we're thinking of revising, if there's something, if you hold on to this formal complaints, but then there's also something in place that's the process. Because I think what's missing might be the process. I went and looked at my kids' school's student handbooks, and I couldn't find, if I am a parent and I have an issue, is there a structured process in place? Is that uniform? And I don't know if that exists, and I'm just not finding the right place. But I don't know if that would help with, there's something for students, there's something for families, but there's this procedure for complaints. And I don't know how that goes as far as board policy, but if it's just there is a complaint process in place, I don't know how that looks. Still learning. But I think I felt like those were two separate, the complaints, but then the process.
Yes, Shivani.
Okay, this is a little bit unrelated. It's like a suggestion / question, and I know Dr. Holman talked about how we have a study session on this policy next time, and I was just wondering, especially for I know the panorama survey is the very next thing that we're looking at, and I'm wondering, correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember a question on the panorama survey asking how truthfully did you answer this survey, and also it's all anonymous, right? So and then Dr. Holman just talked about how he's unsure whether or not all complaints that are filed, and I was wondering is there kind of any data from the panorama survey on that, whether or not students are actually speaking to admin about their complaints and how comfortable they feel doing that?
Thank you, Shivani, for that question. Is it the Healthy You survey that asks, "Are you being truthful?"
Yeah, I think it's that one.
I think it is
I don't
too.
remember. There's so many surveys. I just take them. But yeah, so yeah.
And so our resident expert on Survey Bank is not present at the moment, and so I can't answer in Panorama, is there something? What I do know is if there is a question that we want asked consistently for monitoring, we can build that into the student survey. Panorama allows us to add questions like that. And so we would just need to be explicit about what is it that we are looking for so that we develop a question that actually asks and gets information about what we're intending to monitor. So
Just follow up. These Panorama surveys are anonymous, right? So therefore you're getting more truthful responses because no one's identity is attached to this.
So students, I'm gonna have our resident expert answer that, who isn't here right now, but
okay.
Because there is a layer of it that is available to the district, but I want to make sure that I'm answering that correctly. So I don't want to say something that provides false information.
Okay, no worries. I guess I'll wait till next study session then. Thank you.
The resident expert.
Deputy Superintendent Gillingham.
Yes, Director Guthrie.
Sorry, one other thing I just realized was that we did not have our student reps at all present at our previous study session when we were talking about sort of values around community engagement and so on. So we should definitely make sure to include them at the next study session and maybe do something to make sure that we have their input because you are a very important community stakeholder.
Yes, Shivani.
This is really unrelated. I'm just gonna turn off the mic because it's unrelated.
Yes, Shivani, you are excused. Thank you so much for attending tonight. Are there any other comments from the rest of the board? Okay. I just wanted to put it out there that looking at the last time this policy was revised, it looks like it was last looked at in 2012. So I think it makes sense that we definitely are questioning whether or not it is capturing the values of our community and our board because it has been a substantial amount of time. So looking forward to our next study session and the work that we're going to be doing going forward. Hearing no further discussion, we will proceed to a vote on the motion. It has been moved by Director LaLiberty and seconded by Director Yoakum that the board accept and approve the monitoring report as compliant with the exceptions noted. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
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 All those opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. The next item on the agenda is the board summary for monitoring report OE10. OE10 is the operational expectation for around the learning environment and the treatment of students. This monitoring report was presented and approved at the November 6, 2023 board meeting. I'd like to thank Director LaLiberty for writing the board summary for OE10 based on our discussion at the November 6 board meeting. I will now entertain a motion to approve the board summary for OE10 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, we will proceed to vote on the motion. It has been moved by Director Guthrie and seconded by Director LaLiberty that the board approve the monitoring report for OE10 as presented. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. And the next item on the agenda is the board summary for monitoring report OE11. OE11, or operational expectation in 11, is in regards to the instructional program. It was presented and approved at the November 20th, 2023 board meeting, and I have written the board summary for OE11 instructional program based on our discussion at the November 20th board meeting. I will now entertain a motion to approve the board summary for OE11 as presented.
Second. Sorry.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, we will proceed to vote on the motion. It has been moved by Director LaLiberty and seconded by Director Yoakum that the board approve the board summary for OE11 as presented. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
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 All those opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. And the next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Dr. Holman.
Okay, and so tonight I wanted to bring forward Washington State's Chinese American, Americans of Chinese Descent History Month. I realize I don't bring forward every recognition and talk about it, but this is the first year of this recognition. And I also want to recognize those are our students and our family standing next to the governor as he signed this bill into law. And so I know the families in Lake Washington were influential in this process. And so just wanted to share a little bit of information about this. So Senate Bill 5000 took 3 years to pass. And so I know there was a lot of conversation and advocacy and information shared with the legislature about this information and why it would be valuable for our community. Once it was adopted and approved, turned into RCW 43-117-130. And it's 3 paragraphs, and so I'm just going to grab one of the paragraphs to share that January of each year will be designated as a time for people of this state to commemorate the contributions of Chinese Americans and Americans of Chinese descent to the history and heritage of Washington State, and shall be designated as Chinese American Americans of Chinese Descent History Month. And I would encourage the board to go to this RCW and read the intent of the legislature. They did a really nice job of capturing the why and the background. And they conclude with stating the legislature finds that these and other contributions to the state's rich history and economy by Chinese Americans is worthy of recognition and celebration. The legislature further finds that teaching that history in schools will help to commemorate the important achievement of Chinese Americans. And while it was not a directive that schools teach, it was encouraged in the RCW. And so each month our Equity and Family Engagement Department sends out a newsletter. And what I don't remember is it might just go to staff, but it goes beyond that. Thank you. In a moment of unknowing, thank you. And this month they highlighted the Chinese Americans of Chinese Descent History Month, and they shared information about it. They asked a student to provide an anecdote about it. They asked a staff member to provide an anecdote about it. Anecdote, not an antidote, not a healing methodology. But that would be interesting as well. And then later in their article, they shared resources for staff members, books that teachers could bring into the classroom to appropriately recognize and honor this month. On our website, we also have this information. And this statement is by Emily Shee, who you see there shaking hands with the governor as he signed this bill into law. And I want to call out the final statement she makes. She says, "I believe this is a really excellent opportunity for schools to teach students about the rich history of Chinese Americans, both the good and the bad things that are part of our history." And so want to recognize our students and our families that are recognized in this month of January as Chinese Americans of Chinese Descent History Month. It's exciting for them to be recognized in this manner. And really appreciate their contributions and their partnership in our school district. And want to call out our students. It's not every day you get to stand next to the governor and shake his hand as he signs a bill into law. That's pretty exciting, and I know it was very meaningful for them. So that is my superintendent's report tonight.
Thank you very much, Dr. Holman. The next item on our agenda this evening is Public and Community Affairs. This portion of the business meeting of the board is an opportunity for any board members to inform and provide updates from organizations or groups they engage with on behalf of Lake Washington School District. Director Stewart, would you like to provide an update?
Sure. Today is both the first day of the Washington State Legislature and Congress. Those of you who aren't holding your breath until the end of it, you should start holding your breath because it could be a bumpy ride for both. The LWSD will have its day on the Hill on the 24th. We will go down and meet with our legislators separate from the WASDA meeting. President Choi will be attending the NSBA Day on the Hill on the 29th as part of their overall legislative and meetings. It should be noted, too, that each Monday, WASDA is going to be having a webinar. They will be synopsizing what happened the previous week in session and what they're looking forward to. And it's, in the past, I've found them very, very helpful. It's, if you can make time for them. They're at noon, that's a problem for a lot of folks, I imagine. The Eastside Health Services Forum will be this Thursday. I'll be attending that. Friday, the 12th, President Choi and Director Guthrie will be meeting, and along with staff with Representative Schreier. The WASDA Legislative Representation Board, or Rep Board, meeting will be on the 15th, which I'm surprised that they're scheduling something on King Day, but they are. The other thing to keep in mind is we also have school visits coming up on the 18th and February 6th. I think that's pretty much sums it up. There's a few other things, but I think that's given the time of the day.
Thank you, Director Stewart. Does anybody else have anything for public and community affairs? Director Guthrie?
Yeah, there was also, we met with Representative Schreier last Friday.
I'm sorry?
It was last Friday. And there was also a briefing for some of our legislators around AI by Deputy Superintendent Beebe and Director Baker, is that right? Executive Director Baker, thank you. Sorry, not down with everybody's titles. Yes, just to tell them a little bit about the work that we're doing here in Lake Washington, and there was lots of excitement. They were kind enough to invite me too, so I got to sit in. It was fun to hear the questions that the legislators were asking. Senator Wellman was very active, had a lot of great input, and there were also representatives or representatives of Representative Schreier and Representative Del Bene too, and there was another state senator who popped in for a bit. So it was great to be able to share that work with them as they head into the legislative session and to have that work be top of mind. I was very thankful to get to watch the presentation and thankful that we're communicating with our legislators in that way.
Also want to just recognize that Senator Dingra is sponsoring the bill related to LGOs. Senator Wellman is also, I guess, co-sponsor or sub-sponsor or whatever that is. Of that, we're continuing to look for someone on the House side to sponsor that because our ask is that this bill actually pass this session. And so I know that bill dropped on the Senate side, and so excited that that is potentially moving forward.
Director Stewart?
In the same vein, during the holiday time frame, I was at two receptions which met with legislators and some other office holders, and one in particular was the King County Assessor, John Wilson, and he was very interested in our move to work on LGOs, and he would love to work with us.
What's his name again?
John Wilson. I'll get you the contact information. I thought I had his card on me, but I couldn't find it. Nice guy.
Anyone else? Okay. The next item on the agenda is school visits. December's school visits took place on December 6th to McAuliffe Elementary and Inglewood Middle School. Highlights from the visit and a summary are posted on on board docs for anybody who's interested to read. January school visits will take place on the 18th to Juanita High School and Sandburg Elementary. Does anybody have any updates or comments regarding school visits? Director Yoakum.
Thank you. No, I'm signed up for the next one. Is anyone else going?
I can go to the afternoon ones, but I can't go in the mornings.
I did attend the December 6th one with McCullough and Inglewood, and I will take any chance to go visit classrooms and see students and meet with teachers. So it was very. Let's see, McCullough. We talked about the language arts and looking at their scheduling as far as how they align that by grade, and so basically all services can be pushed in ideally to classrooms. So that was really nice to see. At Inglewood, it was really focused on math, and it was interesting to see all the different levels of math at Inglewood and different teaching strategies that were used. And there was one educator, and I did end up emailing just to say thank you, because his ability to, it wasn't so much around math, but it was more of getting the groups to look at different ways of solving problems. And the goal was to try and come up with a new way, an original way that no one else in the classroom or no other group will come up with. And that is just part of like a creativity standard of trying to look at things differently. And it was just really nice to see that being done in a math class. So excited for the next one.
Thank you, Director Stewart.
One last thing. There's coming up in the Department of Education, the Federal Department of Education, their National Center on Digital Education, access to education for their disabilities program, and they're going to be entertaining comments and also taking applications for the program. I thought I'd pass that on to John, and also then might want to look at giving it to our SPED folks. I'll send you the information.
The next item on the agenda is board committee updates. Does anybody have an update they would like to provide regarding any of the committees that they sit on? Director Guthrie.
It's been a minute, but back in November, actually the same day in November, I think, if I remember right, there was a meeting of the Literacy Advisory Committee. A lot of the work of that committee now, as Director Pease shared with the board a couple of meetings ago, the actual literacy adoption was supposed to be, we were targeting fall of 2025. It's now targeting fall of 2026. So there's some interesting opportunities, connection to the social studies work that we heard about in the study session and so on. But there is also sort of okay, how do we make best use of the curricular resources that we have today, knowing that we're going to be enjoying them for another year more than expected. So a lot of that meeting was around small group instruction, looking at how we do grading and so on in the context of our current tools. And then that evening I went to the second meeting of Community Connectors, which is a group that's focused on really ultimately looking at the MOUs, I forget what the acronym is, that we sign with our different law enforcement partners, that the district signs, excuse me, and making sure that reflects the values of the community. It's a really cool group to work with. There are there's district staff, there's city staff, there are police officers, there are leaders of different community organizations, and then the woman sitting next to me said, I may be in the wrong place. My daughter was sort of interested in school safety, so I signed up for the Tier 2 level, but now I think you're telling me I'm in Tier 1. She was a parent in the district and showed up and engaged, and it was really cool to see that. So a lot of the time was spent with the different folks in attendance talking about the different connections they have in the community and thinking about who does this group want to go out and bring their input back into this room as we work through these decisions. We were hoping to get to talk about what we wanted to go out to these community members with. We quickly realized that we really need another meeting. So there's a meeting scheduled. We weren't supposed to meet till April. Again, but then there's another meeting scheduled at the end of January to work through some of that. And I was really excited to see there will be child care provided at that meeting. Huge kudos for that. That was something that we had talked about a few weeks ago. Or a few board meetings ago. It's come up regularly from this group as that being a barrier. So really pleased to see that feedback incorporated, especially for that particular committee. So thank you.
Thank you for that update. Anyone else? Okay. I do know that a lot of committees took a bit of a break over the holidays, as expected, so eagerly anticipating our next round of committee meetings that are coming up, I think, pretty much for everyone. With that being said, the board plans to meet next on January 22nd with a study session at 5 p.m. and a board meeting at 7 p.m. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn the January 8th, 2024 board meeting.
Second.
It has been moved by Director LaLiberty and seconded by Director Stewart that we adjourn. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, hearing none, motion carries. The meeting is adjourned at 9:18 p.m. Thank you, everyone.